Everything you're about to hear is for education and entertainment purposes only. Whilst we are licensed, we're not aware of your personal financial circumstances. Any advice is general advice. Equity Mates operates under Australian Financial Services Licence 540697.
Equity Mates!
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.
Welcome to Equity Mates Investing, the podcast where we explore what's possible in the world of investing. If you've just joined us for the first time, a huge welcome. My name is Bryce, and today we look at the crazy growth of Shein and Temu. We reveal the top 5 ASX stocks of the past decade that aren't mining, and we get an update on what's going on in the world of cryptocurrency. To chat through it, as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you?
I'm very good, Bryce. I'm very excited for this episode. We've got a lot to cover. Before we do, though, there's something else I'm excited for, and that is our upcoming live event.
Yes.
On the 10th of April in Sydney, we are taking Ask an Advisor on the road, and we're doing it live.
We are. So if you have any burning money or investing questions that you want to put to an experienced financial advisor, this is your opportunity. We are going to be joined by Glenn Hare from Fox & Hare, one of Australia's leading financial advisors, to talk all things investing, property, budgeting, superannuation, cost of living, you name it.
Well, you literally name it because you get the chance to ask the questions.
That's true.
So head to equitymates.com/events or hit the link in the show notes for more information and to secure your tickets.
Yeah.
We can't wait to see you there. But Bryce, as we said, there's heaps going on in the world of markets and investing. So hit it.
News and markets.
Now, Bryce, I'm looking at our Google Doc and you've just got a note. I'm going to tell you about a company you haven't thought of in a while.
Yeah, I mean, this is just classic. It's reflective of what's going on in crypto at the moment. Company that I haven't even thought about in a while, not considered, zero interest. MicroStrategy. Oh. It's back in the news.
Here we go again.
Up 100% in the last month, up 316% in the last 6 months. If people are wondering why, it's because they have vast amounts of Bitcoin on their balance sheet.
People might be familiar with the CEO, Michael Saylor, who had a quote that it was like, what we call people that save in fiat is poor, or something like that.
Classic.
Just like that, yeah. He loaded up his balance sheet again recently to buy more Bitcoin. I was more than happy not thinking about MicroStrategy.
Yeah, that's it. We don't have to discuss it.
So I don't know why you brought it up.
Well, you love talking about Bitcoin.
We're gonna have Tracey from Crypto Curious on the show later today to give us the crypto update. Every week we send a weekly crypto update, and we include some of the big headlines and some of the big tweets, and there's always some memes in there. So it's worth subscribing to if you just want that one weekly touch point. How about this from the email this week? Bitcoin surpassed the Swiss franc to become the 13th largest currency in the world. Bitcoin surpasses silver to become the 8th largest asset in the world. And then this just in, President Donald Trump says Bitcoin, well, I should say former President Donald Trump says Bitcoin is a, quote, additional form of currency with a lot of use. So we're back.
We're back. We'll do this whole dance again, blah, 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 and then we'll go around in circles. We'll keep going around in circles. Let's talk about something more substantive, Ren. China.
You came bursting into the studio this morning and said, we have to speak about TikTok.
I definitely didn't. But yes, it's worth talking. Well, it's worth noting what's going on if you haven't seen the news. It's gathering a lot of speed over in the US. And overnight, the House passed a bill to ban TikTok or force the sale or divest it from the ByteDance, which is owned by the CCP.
No, it's not owned by the CCP.
It's not owned by the CCP. No, it's not.
Hey, who red-pilled you?
It has very strong ties to the CCP.
Okay, so let's just be clear. The US House said that the American version of it had to either had to be sold or had to be shut down, essentially. Yeah. Now, that isn't a law yet.
No.
It has to be passed by the Senate, has to be signed by President Biden. Yeah, TikTok, America is TikTok's largest market. So it would be a massive blow. This policy was first put in place by Trump when he was president, and it was like Microsoft and I think Oracle were bidding to try and buy it, and then it eventually didn't happen, and ByteDance kept owning it. And we should be clear that whilst ByteDance is a Chinese company and it is regulated by the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party, it isn't owned by the CCP. Although, you know, I, like everyone, buy into a lot of the conspiracy theories about the two different versions of TikTok, if you're in China and if you're out of China, and what content's being served up and all of that stuff. I think there's some truth to that. But the largest shareholders of ByteDance are American companies. So,
Oh yeah, I think Sequoia.
yeah, some of the, and like some of those big
Huge VC
VCs.
funds.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're wondering why this is all happening, it stems right back to it's a national security issue is what it is all boiling down to. They think that a lot of information on US citizens is being shared back to the Chinese government via data through TikTok.
I mean, the law doesn't specifically call out TikTok. I don't think you could make a law specifically for one person or one business. It's a law that targets, quote, foreign adversary controlled applications.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, really says a lot there.
Yeah.
I think this story still has a lot to play out. I don't think this is nearly close to done. So I think let's just flag it that it could happen. What it is going to do from an investing point of view is really throw a spanner in the works of ByteDance's proposed IPO. Because they were going to list in the US. That might be a little bit more difficult now.
Come to the ASX.
Sure. So let's watch this space. I think there's a bit more to play out there. But that's not the only Chinese company that's in the news at the moment. And to kick this off, Bryce, I want to play something and I want you to tell me if you recognize it.
I feel like a billionaire. I'm shopping like a billionaire. I'm shopping like a billionaire. I'm shopping like a billionaire.
Sound familiar?
Yes, I actually have heard this. Yeah.
Okay.
It's an ad for Temu.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shop like a billionaire.
Shop like a billionaire is their tagline.
Yeah.
Worst tagline.
working.
A billionaire isn't buying underpriced.
I think it just means shop heaps. Feel like you can buy a lot.
Yeah. Your dollar can
buy
go
whatever
further.
you want.
Yeah. Buy without budgeting.
Yeah.
And then also that was their Super Bowl ad that they just played over and over again, and in a forum where it's celebrities and like multi-million-dollar ads, it was that song and a cartoon.
And for context, Temu is a Chinese e-commerce platform that sells thousands and thousands and thousands of different products at incredibly cheap prices. You probably would have been hit by them on Instagram.
Yes.
100, they're going crazy.
Yeah, according to the investment bank Jarden, products on Temu are 60 to 80% cheaper than Amazon.
Wow.
And Amazon's pretty cheap to begin with.
Yeah.
So Shein and Temu both are really sourced directly from Chinese manufacturers. Shein in fashion and Temu in goods.
Just like, stuff.
Crap.
Yeah, stuff. Yeah.
If you are under 30 and not on TikTok, you're probably not as familiar. If you are on TikTok or you're under 30, you're probably very familiar with them. They've really been driven by TikTok, Shein especially.
Definitely.
Just unbelievable. But the reason that we're talking about them today in an Australian context is these two companies have landed in Australia and have landed in a big way. More than 2 million Australians, so these numbers are from Roy Morgan, more than 2 million Australians now shop with them, 800,000 at Shein, 1.26 million at Temu. Roy Morgan estimate that they now both do over $1 billion in sales per year in Australia. 1.04 billion for Shein, 1.31 billion for Temu. Roy Morgan also estimates that Temu is now bigger than Catch.com.au and Temple & Webster. Weird comparator, but I guess, anyway, they're in there. And that Temu is fast closing on Kogan. So there's some meaningful retailers that it's catching up to. So if you haven't shopped at Shein or Temu before,
Don't do it.
Don't do it because
No.
there's a number of ethical questions and concerns. But I think the takeaway is these Chinese companies are really making a mark in Australia.
Absolutely. I think globally, like you think about what impact this is going to have on Amazon and the like what they've done to their supply chain and how they've optimized that, arguably with a lot of unethical practices, but it's incredible. I think Shein is on track for an IPO at some point.
Shein are looking to list.
Yeah.
Temu, do you know who owns them?
It's a holding company, PPD or something like that,
PDD, but people are probably familiar with it. I reckon you're going to be familiar with the name. It's Pinduoduo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this is a company that we've been speaking about for years. When I chose Tencent as my stock of the year a few years ago, we were talking about Pinduoduo back then. So it's just this relentless march of some of these Chinese companies. Yeah.
Shein add 2,000 new items to their store every day.
Yeah. It is like you can't even call it fast fashion because it's
mind-boggling. Anyway,
I think the takeaway is after 2 decades of probably more than 2 decades of American companies just expanding around the world, we're now seeing Chinese companies sort of flex their muscle, and as China establishes itself as an economic superpower, this is going to happen more and more. We're going to get these Chinese companies doing what the American companies did a generation
20
before.
years ago,
Yeah.
All right, Ren, off the back of our chat last week on all-time highs, we decided to look at some of the companies that have been performing the best over the last decade rather than sort of the last 52 weeks here on the ASX. So we've got the top 5 best performing stocks for the past 10 years.
That aren't mining. This is inspired by the episode last week, but more by your 20-year portfolio view.
Yeah.
If you had bought any of these stocks, you would have done better.
Obviously.
All right, Bryce. So these are the top 5 ASX stocks of the past 10 years that aren't mining stocks. Coming in, all of this data is thanks to Ticker, ticker.com/equitymates. If you want to check it out, the link will be in the show notes. So how we'll do this is we'll go through the list and then we'll talk about the companies. So coming in at number 5, Pinnacle Investment Management Group, up 1,889%. So more than 10 bagged, almost 20 bagged over the last 10 years. Coming in at number 4, Polynovo, 1,891%. Podium finish, number 3, Altium, 2,565%. Second place, Hub24, up 3,993%. And then number 1, more than 100 bagged over the past 10 years. Pro Medicus, up 12,274%.
There you go.
What are your big takeaways from that list?
I don't own any of them. That's my first takeaway.
I mean, to be fair, you would own all 5 of them in an ASX 200 ETF.
Yeah, sorry. I don't own any individually. I'm surprised to see Pinnacle in there.
Okay.
I just never would have. Nothing against Pinnacle at all. We do work with Pinnacle and a lot of their fundies that they look after, but not a story that I'd ever seen really in the headlines.
Well, before we get too far into our analysis, maybe let's just introduce what those 5 companies do.
Sure. So Pinnacle, they are an investment manager, but they essentially are an umbrella company where they provide distribution services, business support, sort of back end for all of the affiliates that are underneath them. So there's well-known fund managers such as Coolabah, which is Chris Joy, Hyperion, Firetrail, and a number of the guys that we've had on the show before. They all operate underneath Pinnacle, and Pinnacle then can distribute a lot of that sort of fixed cost across, well, not fixed cost, but provide support across all these fund managers.
They take all the admin out of fund managers so fund managers can focus on picking stocks.
Yeah.
What's Polynovo do?
So this is what they say they do.
Yes.
Polynovo develops innovative synthetic dermal substitutes utilizing patented bioabsorbable polymer technology. Now, if you're to explain that like I'm 5, they do synthetic skin. A a lot. I think they do. Well, anyway. Then we've got Altium. We spoke about them during the summer series. They design printed circuit boards. Hub24, they're a big wrap platform for financial planners. And then Pro Medicus, they provide software for radiology and medical imaging to hospitals, imaging centres, doctors, the like.
Yeah. So my big takeaway for me, there's a wide range of companies making up the top 5 ex-mining. We've got financial services with Pinnacle, we've got healthcare with Polynovo, and then like 3 technology platforms really. Pro Medicus and Hub and Altium are all technology, but all different fields, you know. Well, actually, I guess they're all software, but a bit of a spread, which you like to see. My big takeaway, though, outside of Altium, none of them have got a lot of mainstream AFR-like buzz.
Well, I did do a bit of historical research on Pinnacle because I was like, how have I missed this? Like, as I said, we engaged with them. There were headlines, but like...
Of course.
Yeah. Not to the tune of like after, but it didn't capture the retail attention that some of the other companies have over the last decade.
I think there's pockets of the Australian financial community that have been obsessed with some of these stocks, and the one that really comes to mind is the sort of ex-Motley Fool world of Andrew Page, Owen Rusk, Claude Walker, Scott Phillips, who still is at the Motley Fool. Like Pro Medicus for them has been a big company. I think Claude 100 bagged it, so he picked it early and rode it all the way, so full credit to him. And then, you know, companies like Hub24, like they've been a great story. Them, Net Wealth and Praemium have sort of disrupted the whole financial planning software space. And we've known that theme is playing out for the decade. Didn't invest ever.
No.
Yeah.
Take that ASX 200, they're all in there.
Yeah.
But Ren, you've teased the whole way through that this list is ex-mining stocks. If we were to actually look at the top 10 regardless of sector, are there any in there that aren't mining?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
So for example, Pro Medicus is the second best performer.
Okay, right, nice.
But to get 5 non-mining stocks, how far down the list of all ASX past 10 years best performing do you think I had to go down?
How big is the list?
Yeah, before I got to 5 non-mining.
20.
Not that many.
Okay.
It was 13.
Okay.
So, Pinnacle Investment Management is the 5th best non-mining ASX.
Yeah.
But it is the 13th best overall.
Yes.
Now, I'll give you the list of miners. And I've already asked you. Well, you can see who number 1 is. Yeah, I think some people would guess it.
To be honest, so there's a name in here that I'm surprised isn't in here.
Okay, well I'll go through the list. You tell me who you think's missing.
Okay.
So coming in at number 8, Stanmore Resources up 2,000%. Emerald Resources up 3,000%. De Grey Mining up 3,200%. Boss Energy up 3,800%. Capricorn Metals up 4,000%. Bellevue Gold up 5,300%. Coming in at number 2 for the miners, number 3 overall, Lionstown Resources up 6,700%. And then coming in at second place was Pro Medicus. And then the number 1 miner and non-miner, just the number 1 story on the ASX over the last 10 years, Pilbara Minerals up 25,000.
Amazing. Has shot the lights out. I only recognise 2 names on that list, Pilbara and Liontown. The rest just goes to show the breadth of small mining companies out there that if they hit, they go.
Well, I mean, it's just a reminder that as much as we love the non-mining stories on the ASX, Australia is a mining
definitely
index.
Yeah, it's resources. Yeah,
there was this is sort of unrelated, but there's activist investors now trying to convince Glencore to move their primary listing to the ASX and keep their coal business. Implicit in that is that Australian investors just love mining.
Yeah. I thought Fortescue would have been on there, but it's nowhere near by the look of it. It's only up in the last decade in the hundreds of percent, not thousands. So,
I mean, I think the one thing that you take away there, like I asked this question in the office yesterday, and people's first guesses were like best performer on the ASX. People's first guesses were companies like CSL. But if you want to be the best performer over like a 10-year period, you can't be too big to start with.
Yeah.
You're going to be in that like mid cap, 200 mil, 300 mil market cap range, and then you're going to grow into like 3 bill, 10 bill market cap. Like that's sort of the sweet spot for growth investors. Now, we've just taken a quick break because we wanted to fact check the Pilbara number. Not that we're impugning the data that comes from Ticker, but it just seemed like such a wildly large number that we wanted to double check it. There is a quirk to this, which is timing really matters. And if you go back 10 years, that was when Pilbara was right down in the dumps. It was trading at 1 cent. So even though it listed in the teens, it might have had some stock splits, but split adjusted exactly 10 years ago, it was trading at 1 cent.
right.
Yeah, so that's why it's had such a big growth from there.
Now trading at $4.18.
Yeah, so, if you go back to when it listed to now, it's grown 3,000% since 2010. But from exactly 10 years ago when it was at 1 cent, it's up 25,000%. Not bad.
Crazy.
So, Bryce, I guess the question is, all these 13 stocks, but especially the 5 non-mining stocks, the obvious question becomes, is it too late to buy them?
The obvious answer is I don't know. No, I think you should never be put off by the fact that that a lot of these companies have run. If you look at how much Amazon's run, if you look at how much Berkshire Hathaway's run, if you look at how much all of these huge companies have run over the last 20 or so years, that doesn't mean that they've run out of gas. So I think it always just comes back to doing the work and coming up with your investment thesis, and you never know what can happen from here.
Yeah, I think the idea that looking at historic performance and having an influence on what the company's prospects are going forward, like that just colours the idea. Like for example, like you look at these companies, the market thinks there's so much growth in them. Hub24 trades at a 78 price to earnings. Pro Medicus trades at 150 price to earnings.
Wow.
So the market thinks these companies are going to keep growing. The big caveat being is that you're paying a lot for these companies. Like you wouldn't think they're perhaps fairly valued at the moment. So yeah, like there's growth there. The question just becomes the price you're paying.
You need to look at the story. Like if you actually looked at Pinnacle at its peak, it was up almost 11,000% or thereabouts. But it's going through the same sort of story that Magellan did, drop in performance fees, funds under management. It has been hit hard. So yeah, you just got to do the work on each of them.
Pinnacle still trading at a 30 price to earnings, which is probably expensive for that business, but it's not 150 that Pro Medicus is trading at.
Crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, let's take a quick break here, and then on the other side, we're going to be joined by Tracey from Crypto Curious to talk about another asset class that keeps on running, crypto. Welcome back to Equity Mates. We are joined by Tracey Plowman, the co-host of Crypto Curious, Australia's #1 crypto podcast, which I'm sure is getting a lot of buzz with crypto markets as they are at the moment. Tracey, welcome to Equity Mates.
Thanks for having me, guys. Certainly are getting a lot of buzz at the moment.
Now, we've touched on crypto briefly here, but we haven't really gone too deep into what's going on at the moment. So we wanted to call in the experts to get us up to speed, I guess. So, Tracey, for people who switched off in 2021 when the market peaked and started falling, give us the update. What has happened in the past few years?
Oh, look, there's probably a little bit to catch up on because you're right. I think it was November 2021 that we did hit that all-time high and we started the podcast. So we hit that, which was everyone was very excited about crypto then. So it was 68,000 USD at the time. The markets were frothy. And then enter 2022, and it was a year, to be honest, that we would probably rather forget as crypto natives. It wasn't a great year for us. I think the things that really sparked it off was the global central banks, including the US Federal Reserve. They raised interest rates all around the world to kind of fight inflation, and then that makes things like crypto less appealing for others. So that started the market downturn. But then things like the constant threat of regulation, which is always a worry for us in the crypto market, that was on the news every day throughout 2022. But the two major things that killed us were events, for those who maybe were still listening, Temu, which was the collapse of an algorithmic stablecoin that lost its peg to the US dollar, which was a huge event. And then obviously towards the end of 2022, Freed and FTX, that massive collapse that that did kind of filter into the normie markets as well. So that was huge. So 2022 was really a year that we wanted to forget. So we know how that ended for us.
Not great.
Yeah, I guess so. That really was kind of the tail between the legs. November 2023, things turned around, I guess.
So 2020, end of last year, well, not end of last year, I think Bitcoin doubled in price from the beginning of 2023 to the end. So it wasn't just towards the end, but it started gathering a fair bit of steam. And now, Tracey, we find ourselves at a point where Bitcoin and Ethereum have both hit all-time highs, so surpassing that November 2021 mark. The big question that Ren and I ask, and I imagine a lot of your community and the Equity Mates community is asking, is where does it go from here?
Look, I think Ethereum actually hasn't touched all-time high. I think it just... it's
that's why we get 4, the experts.
Yeah. So I think Ethereum's just touched 4,000, which is huge. It's got a little way to go. I think it's 4,600 USD. So, but we've just had a massive upgrade in the last 24 hours on the Ethereum network. So I don't think it's too far away. What's the big news for us is that we're seeing things that are really unusual. Normally because we're in uncharted territory, normally we don't see this all-time high until the halving. But this has happened before the halving, so we've not seen this before. And I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that the Bitcoin ETF has happened. And it's been amazing. I don't know if you've been keeping up with this, but the demand for these ETFs has just been relentless. We actually had, I think, $1 billion for the first time in one day flowing through the ETFs. This is just Monday just gone. Wow. And we don't see this kind of, we don't see that slowing down. So again, we're in uncharted territory. We do not see this slowing down. So we think it'll push through to the halving, and who knows? That's the thing. We're all everyone's obviously very excited in our community. The halving, again, is only 37 days away.
Do you have a countdown on your fridge?
We certainly do. We do.
Now, for people who are unfamiliar with this term, the halving is when Bitcoin miners get half the reward that they previously got for mining crypto. Yep. Why is it such a seminal event, and why does it correlate so strongly to price?
It's a built-in rule that ensures there's only 21 million Bitcoins that will ever exist. Everyone gets very excited about that, and the price goes up.
Well, it's making the supply side of things more restricted in some way. If it's harder to mine.
No, but it's a stock and flow thing, because the stock is still there. The existing stock of Bitcoin is still there to be traded. It's just the flow slows down.
Well, that's what I mean. The rate at which
exactly, because it cuts the miners' rewards in half. So it makes Bitcoin rarer because the miners aren't getting as many in that respect. And then on top of that, you've got this demand for the ETF happening at the same time. So, there might be, I assume there's going to be some kind of liquidity crisis coming soon as well, because there's just not enough out there at this point in time.
Does that just not push the price to crazy levels though?
I think that's what Tracey's saying.
Exactly. So, I mean, this is really uncharted territory for us. It's pretty exciting.
But Trace, we should temper people's expectations, because the halving historically has normally seen a price run up before the halving, and then there's been a crash and then a subsequent run up. Isn't that right? It's not all. It's not just one way.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And we do have to say the reason that a lot of people in traditional finance, look down on Bitcoin is that it is a very, very volatile market, and we haven't seen any pullbacks yet. And a lot of the circles that I talk in are just waiting for a pullback. We haven't had any substantial pullbacks yet. We usually see corrections anywhere between 25 and 55%, and they will happen undoubtedly. And we usually see one straight after the halving, and on the run up to whatever our next all-time high will be, there's usually between 3 and 5 of these deep pullbacks. So they will inevitably happen. Will they be more shallow this time round? Who knows? But they definitely will happen. But now that we are starting from a higher kind of level, they won't be quite as deep this time. So
now I'm just looking at in 2021. Crypto actually fell 50% between March and July 2021. So we all remember the bull run up, but it's just a reminder that it's an incredibly volatile asset.
Yeah, so just on that, Tracey,
Exactly right.
For a lot of the community who are seeing the headlines and getting excited and potentially thinking about deploying a bit of capital into it, like how do you suggest or think about investing in crypto and Bitcoin at a time like this?
Well, look, to be honest, there was a time to invest, and that was in the bear market for the last 2 years, and that would have been slowly, averaging in your portfolio, dollar cost averaging in over time. But in saying that, what generally happens is that at the halving time, Bitcoin then generally goes on to double within the first 3 or 4 months after that time. That is what history shows us. So we're still early right now. And if you look at it long term, where we think it's going to go, there's a cycle after this and a cycle after that. So I'm still someone who, if you are a long term believer in where this is going, then there's a long way to go, and you should be dollar cost averaging slowly in a very small percentage of your portfolio. And that's being smart about things. But where we are now, I still firmly believe that there is a long way to go. But again, it's about being smart and following the principles of investing and averaging in. I certainly wouldn't be going and putting everything that you want to invest today. If there is an amount that you're feeling like you'd like to invest in this market, I would then potentially break that up into a percentage and then average that in, say, maybe over the next few weeks or months. That would be my bet, because we have not seen a big drawdown yet, but we certainly will.
Trace, I love that. There's some really good bits of investing wisdom there, keeping it at a small percentage of your portfolio, dollar cost averaging in, being very sensible about how you're investing and what the asset class is. So to go a complete 180, one dumb question to close it out. What about all these meme coins? Any projects or coins that we should be keeping an eye on?
Look, I don't like to give specific coins. Obviously, there's a lot that have already done really well. In this market, Bitcoin goes first, Ethereum goes second, and then all these other altcoins go after that. And we know Bitcoin's rising now, and we know Ethereum will go. A lot of other coins have already done exceptionally well. Solana's done, 700% in the last year already. But one area that I'm personally really interested in, the boys also, is this new narrative we've seen, which is DeFi on Bitcoin, and that's opened up this last year because of the ordinals craze. But I'm really interested in that one. There's a lot of tokens and coins that have popped up there specifically. So that's just a whole area that I find really intriguing, and that's a whole different narrative itself. So that's just something else that potentially people could look into on the whole, maybe even listen to the podcast, find out a bit more.
Yeah, well, if people want to hear more from Tracey, Blake and Craig, they can listen to Crypto Curious wherever you listen to podcasts, Australia's #1 crypto podcast. So go check that out. Tracey, as we leave you today, one final question. If you're game, do you have a price target for Bitcoin?
Oh gosh, this is always the hard question. But look, I'll put it out there. I feel, and this is different to what I would have said late last year. I think we'll touch 120K USD really quickly, maybe even in the next 3 or 4 months before a pullback, and then I think we'll hit 180K as the top. That's USD, which would be 270 Aussie.
Wow.
As the top, maybe early next year, which was a lot higher than I had thought. But this all comes off the back of this ridiculously huge inflow from these ETFs. So there you go. That's my prediction.
Not financial advice, but we will be watching this space closely. Trace, we love it. Thank you for joining us today. And I'm sure we'll speak to you again as this market continues on this crazy ride.
Thanks for having me, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Tracey.
All right, Bryce. Well, let's come back down to earth after those lofty predictions. I don't know what to say. It's an exciting market. Could all go belly up.
Been through this before.
But we've been through this before.
Yes, yeah, we're on the roller coaster ride of cryptocurrency. But Ren, we'll leave it there. But Equity Mates will be back in your feed tomorrow with another episode of Buy or Sell.
Can't wait.
You have been listening to an Equity Mates Media production. In the spirit of reconciliation, Equity Mates Media acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. This podcast is intended for education and entertainment purposes. Any advice is general advice only and has not taken into account your personal financial circumstances, needs, or objectives. Before acting on general advice, you should consider if it is relevant to your needs and read the relevant product disclosure statement. And if you're unsure, please speak to a financial professional. The hosts of this podcast and their guests may have positions in the companies mentioned. Equity Mates Media operates under an Australian Financial Services Licence 540697.